Hi everyone, welcome back to the Long Way Back podcast. I'm your host, Timmy Long, and today we have a very special guest,
Sleepy.
fellow Corkonian, and an ex-guest on the Two Norries podcast, Tadhg Hickey.
To me, a pleasure and a delight to see you again, by how are things?
It's absolutely great to have you here, Tadhg. You know, you've been doing a lot with your life the last few years.
4 years now since I did sat down with you last time, yeah.
And I see it all over social media. All positive stuff. You've been doing a lot around Gaza, a lot of comedy sketches and things like that. And we were chatting beforehand about recovery, and I asked you how you were, how life was going with everything else with everything that's going on for you. You know, how you were managing with your recovery and stuff, and you were saying, you know, you've really kind of stepped up the whole recovery process, the spiritual side of the recovery process, the program, and you've implemented it in your life a lot more than you ever would have had before. You know, how's that going for you at the moment?
Yeah, like as we were saying, I need recovery and I need a spiritual path now more than I ever did. You know, when you're first going into recovery and you're so desperate, you're willing to accept anything that anyone tells you, you know. So if someone says you need to do this to survive, you'll do it. And if it means, you know, going to church or, you know, trying to get a spiritual kind of aspect into your life, you'll do it. It's out of desperation. But I'm kind of finding as I go on my journey, I need to have it under all circumstances. So it's not just in desperation when I'm trying to live my life as well. Because I don't know about you, but I had this thing in recovery where I wanted to just, I thought the aim of the game was to get some bit well and then become a normal person, do you know, and then like, you know, be able to go to work and the head not to go so deranged with little stupid things that were happening in my life, and I'd let go of the trauma of the past and all this kind of stuff. My experience has been that it's not like that. It's not like you do the spiritual thing and you get a certificate and then you go on your merry way and you're a normal member of society. I have come to a very peaceful recognition and acceptance that I am not a normal person and I need to work constantly at this thing, like, and that's good because I need to be growing all the time. I have found, I suppose, good way to sum it up is I have found with my recovery that if I'm not moving forward, I'm going backwards. There's no opportunity to coast. I love coasting. And I was a coaster in school. I was a coaster in everything. If what I try to do in life generally is get quite good at something so that people say, geez, he's handy at that, and then just coast. That's what I love doing. But recovery doesn't work that way. You have to keep on working on things, or else for me, I just get into loads of pain.
And it takes time. It's one of these things. It doesn't happen overnight. And well, speaking for this addict here, like, I wanted it overnight. I wanted everything straight away because I thought I was after wasting so much time of my life in addiction that I wanted the education straight away. I wanted to feel better straight away. I wanted my family in my life straight away. I wanted the trust from Nicole straight away. I wanted my kids to love me straight away. All these things did not come straight away. My kids didn't even know who I was, basically, because I was never kind of really around. Nicole, I broke every strand of trust that could have ever been there with her because of my actions while I was in addiction. And I wanted everything straight away. And it wasn't for a good few years after that I actually had to sit down and realise that things are going to take, they're going to be slow. There was something I wanted to ask you there while we were talking about the recovery process, and like a lot of people who listen to this podcast, particularly family members and stuff, they don't really understand the process of a rock bottom. What did your rock bottom look like? No, for me it was like, it wasn't just the one thing, it was a number of different things that could have been my rock bottom, all adding up to this moment where it was like, I can't do this no more.
Yeah.
You know, and it was such a strong, overwhelming, it was a feeling which matched the thought, and the feeling was, there was a mixture of fear, shame, guilt, loneliness, you know, and all kind of into one. and then it was just up onto a concrete slab inside in a cell and just cried just myself to sleep.
Wow.
And it kind of developed from that then, trying to get back into my family's life. You know, my circumstances at the time were fucked up. Like,
Yeah.
prison, going to prison, no family in my life, wanted by fucking different guards from different parts of the city for different things, and it was like I had no hope left in my life, and that was more or less where I was. But it was like my recovery process was not just around alcohol and drugs. Like, my mental health was fucking
same.
My head was gone.
Yeah.
What did your own one look like?
I'm glad that you stressed the kind of mental side of it for you, because my rock bottom would not be, you know, the way sometimes in American TV shows and stuff, like the rock bottom has to be like an event, or, you know, it was when he was picked up in Skid Row or whatever. And that is the case for lots of people. But for me, like, even when I'm doing well, you know, like someone was saying to me recently, they're like, oh, you're doing very well at the moment because I have a lot of work, right? But like, you know, like you could have a load of work and you could be suicidal. Do you know, like, so doing well for me, or the rock bottom, would almost all be centered in the mind and my spirit. How am I doing inside? So for me, like, I had a mother that I had a complicated relationship with her, but she never, ever, under any circumstances, would throw me out. So that was the only reason that I wasn't homeless in the height of my addiction. I knew no matter what I did, and I mean no matter what I did, like, if I knocked on her door, she'd say, come on in, go to sleep, and we'll talk about it in the morning. For all the dysfunction, I had that security, you know, and I know lots of people in recovery who didn't have it.
I can relate.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I had a mother who just, So my circumstances, I mean, I was always working in the arts. I never really had that much money anyway. So it's not like I lost everything. It was more that I lost my mind and I lost my spirit. And it was happening slowly over the course of my 20s. But I was so full of ego. I just thought other people in my life are addicts. There's probably there's a lot of addiction in my family, but I'm different. I'm better. It's all bullshit, like, as you know, but I needed that stuff to survive. It's funny, actually, it was like years later I was talking to a counsellor when I said that, like, there was stuff going on at home in the family, and I created this false ego for myself that I was like, I'm not like them, I'm way better than them, I'm fucking Jim Morrison, I'm, you know, pure fantasy land stuff. And it was only years later the counsellor said, that was very creative of you to do that. I never would have looked at it that way at the time, because I was embarrassed at the time, and I was just like, I'm just full of shit. But actually I created this alter ego to survive. But what happened to me was, like, the alter ego just wasn't fit for purpose anymore. As I was going through my 20s into my early 30s, I was living in a gaff. I wasn't allowed to see my daughter. Then it got to the place where I was probably allowed to see her, but I wasn't capable of seeing her because my head was so gone. And that really scared me. Because, you know, when I wasn't allowed to see her, it was like, I was indignant. Then I was like, how dare you, and all this kind of stuff. Then I found out my mental health was so bad that I didn't feel safe being around her. Do you know, I was actually that low on myself. Like, so my rock bottom would be this fear that I was always running away from my whole life, that I couldn't understand, that I couldn't talk about. This feeling of not being okay, and booze and drugs took it away unbelievably well for a long time. So well, I forgot that I ever had any problems for years. They worked so well. Then they stopped working. I was left with myself, and I couldn't control my thoughts.
The flow of the negativity, the guilt, the shame, and then the emotional aspect, kind of the snowball of those emotions that you probably didn't understand.
You didn't
know what they were. You couldn't I could never put an actual name on the shame, the fear, the guilt,
self-loathing,
the regret. I could never put, because it was like they all just came at the one time in this just big fucking massive fog, and it was just complete. Like, I could feel, if I wanted to go back into how I could feel, I could bring myself back into a moment at the beginning of sitting in a cell and feeling that, and how it was so overwhelming. It was like, if I was able to express it in any way, it would be complete hopelessness.
Yeah.
Complete, you said self-loathing.
Yeah.
100 million %.
Yeah.
I absolutely thought I was the worst person on the planet.
Same.
No good to no one. What was the whole point of you even being there? They're better off without you. Just go away and fucking, you know.
Yeah.
All those things coming together. And it was just, it wasn't coming in boats every hour, or I was able to go away and have a conversation. It was consistent. It didn't stop. I was getting up during the night to go to the toilet. It was the first thing that came into my mind.
Yeah.
You know, and then I was giving myself shit, and I was trying not to. I actually tried to stop drinking at a certain time so I didn't have to wake up to go to the toilet during the night, so I wouldn't go back into that. Fuck, it was so fucking. Well. And I'll tell you where I got a bit of peace with it. I'll tell you where I got a small bit of peace with it. And this is mad. When my mother took her own life.
Wow.
When my mother took her own life, when I was in the Midlands, I was about 9 or 10 months into the sentence. She took her life, and I went from completely depressed, clinically depressed and suicidal, to grief. And I do you know what used to go through my head? Your mama's after doing this for you. Your mama's after taking her own life so you didn't have to feel this way. And you could just grieve.
Wow.
But there was bouts of this trying to get back in, the depression and the hopelessness trying to get back in, and overwhelming with the grief. And I remember mentioning it to the psychologist, and I didn't know too much about anything.
Yeah.
But I was saying, like, I don't feel as bad as I was before, even though I'm grieving, and I just cannot stop crying for what's after happening in my life to my mother. But it's like, I feel that there was some good came out of it, because it's after taking some of the pain that I was feeling all the time. But then after grieving, it came back in.
Yeah.
You know, it stays with you. And I'm going to be very honest, and I have to be very honest because it's my story. I was like that for years. You know, meditation came into my life and helped me to be able to be mindful and allow that stuff to be in my body, because I fought it all the years. But I can honestly say 13 years later, I'm 13 years away from drinking a drug in December.
Fair play, man.
And that was the beginning of my journey. But I can honestly say, no. Do I feel that way now? No.
Yeah.
No. It's a few years I feel complete. It's within the last few years I feel really completely different, and that stuff doesn't have that stronghold that it would have. Can you remember the point where it maybe shifted for you and you didn't have that kind of feeling that you had at the early stages of recovery? Yeah,
I didn't have the constant depression. I would have bouts of it, as you say. But when it would come at me bad, like it did at the end of my drinking, touch wood, in 2015, I had that kind of blizzard effect, as you described, like just the shame, the guilt, the depression, the anxiety, the self-loathing. And there's nothing like that, certainly nothing I've ever experienced, not in a physical realm. It would all be in the head, that level of terror where you kind of think to yourself, I can't control my head now anymore. So like, I've taken all these drugs, I've drank a bottle of whiskey, I've done X, Y, and Z, and I can't shut my head off. So unfortunately, I'm just going to have to be one of these victims of their heads. And that like broke my heart as well. Do you know what I mean? Because again, the ego was still there. I was kind of going like, fuck, like I thought I had all this figured out, but actually I'm going to be just another one of these. I'm going to be a statistic, like, you know, I'm not going to come back from this. I suppose that's where my hopelessness would be, you know. And I don't know about you, right? But I never... Do you know when you were feeling at your worst there, right? And hopefully we'll get a bit more positive now in a minute. But you know when you were feeling at your worst there, did you think other people felt like that? At the beginning, I thought everybody thought and felt like me. Okay, right. At the beginning, because I thought we all thought and felt the same way. Right. Because we're human beings. That life is just painful. Yes, like, yeah. But I didn't realise until later on, after talking to counsellors and psychologists, that no, everybody doesn't feel like that, Timmy. Wow. We all have different upbringings, and some of us are nurtured and we're given love and we're able to express emotions and stuff, whereas with you, it was completely different. Wow. You didn't have those people in your life to be able to help you. And I was like, the penny fucking dropped for me then, and I said,
what the fuck? Like, I believed everybody like fucking felt like that. And I'd be looking at people and saying, that cunt no probably fucking is loading. Like, I didn't realise that people are different.
It was actually the opposite way around, like.
It was fucking mad, man.
Jesus.
I actually thought everybody felt and thought the same way.
I thought everyone was in pretty good form and they were kind of secure in themselves. Even people I would meet at meetings or the people in recovery, I always thought that what they were describing was bad, but you couldn't they wouldn't be able to deal with my head at all. Like,
Do you know what used to bother me? And I mean this. Do you know a cunt that used to be too happy? Just too happy. And I'm looking at him saying, he's a fucking pure fake, like. Because I used to, like, he's a pure, I used to be thinking, no one can be like that. Nobody is that happy. And I'd say, that's totally fucking bollocks. He's faking it, like. Do you know, that was my own head, you see.
Of course.
I couldn't understand how somebody could be happy.
Yeah.
Because I never felt that happiness. I never actually felt that happy or excited about anything in my life based on my own stuff growing up. And it was a challenge while trying to understand all this stuff and trying to get educated around the different kind of core beliefs that I developed as a young child, you know, based on my upbringing and the environment that I was brought up in. And I had to understand as much as the culture in Ireland around the shame with the church and the religion. I had to understand how that was pushing me in school. I had to understand about the shame stuff that was going on in the family home. There was a lot of shame. You know, I had to understand a lot about violence and anger.
Yeah.
I had to understand where all these different things came from. I had to just understand why I thought I was stupid and thick, you know. And I wasn't. I had a few learning differences and stuff like that. And there was ADHD. And you put all these things together and you try to kind of fumble them around like a little jigsaw puzzle and try to fit them in. Oh, the ADHD fucking slot goes in here. And now I understand why this missing piece was I always believed that there was something wrong with me because I couldn't stop, I couldn't relax, I was always impatient, I was rushing to get here, rushing to get there, you know, very compulsive. And this lot here, the dyslexic side of it goes in here, and this shows, I wasn't stupid, I was I was learning in a different way.
I don't think anyone's stupid, to be honest.
You know?
Yeah.
We're all so fucking unique in different ways, and we all have our different talents and gifts, and we're all smart. I can tell you straight up now, I know what my strengths are.
Yeah.
I'm a very, very strong learner visually. And I'm so fucking good at what I do when I put my hands to it, because I love working with my hands.
I love that you're saying that, because we're so slow to give ourselves a bit of credit. Like, that's healing, like, that's growth. Like,
but you know what? It's because of my experiences as well, because I would have beat my fucking, like, tell how bad I was at the beginning of when I got into construction. I'd do something and I'd nearly go up to my foreman and then bring him down and show him it and wait for him to tell me that I wasn't good enough, that I was wrong.
Fuck yeah.
And he'd say to me, that's grand. And I'd say, are you sure? And what about that there, like? No, I said, that's grand. It was like I was waiting, and I'd always look for somebody to tell me whether, to me that's great. I never believed in myself. But I kept doing good. I kept kind of, that belief changed in time then, Tadhg, you know?
Why do you think I got into comedy? The exact same thing, like, because when you hear somebody laugh at something that you've said or done, that then is the immediate feedback from another person. Okay, I must be okay. I must be doing well here. Because I'd have no real sense of it, because the ego version of myself, this false self, was telling me that I was brilliant anyway, no matter what I did. But the deep kind of insecurity that was there, that was never looked at from childhood, was telling me, you're a piece of shit, man. Nobody wants you here. You know, still to this day, if I was doing a comedy gig, I would have a thought on the way in going, I could be the headline act in a venue that's sold out. And my thoughts will be, nobody wants you here. Why are you even in town? You know, you should never have worn this shirt. You're a fucking idiot, you know. But when I'm good, I can laugh at it, like, you know, and this comes to a central point of my recovery journey, learning later on that all those moments of crisis throughout my life, they all had one thing in common, and it was that I felt I couldn't control my head anymore. And what I meant by that was I couldn't control my thinking. I was just lost in a flurry of activity in my head. Like Sean now would be like absolutely bored out of his mind from hearing me talking about thinking again, because I'm always talking to him. It's just, no matter what he says, he goes, that's just your thinking. But it is kind of just your thinking, you know, like I've, through a bit of outside help and in recovery as well, I've come to realize that the fear, like, horrible stuff happened for sure, but it's what my head did to try and understand it afterwards. That's what caused all the fear, you know. And you don't have to go with your thinking, and there's no one way out of it. But at this point now, I have a few different skills and I have a few different tactics to not get swept up in the head. And I'm experiencing lately in recovery, when I'm not swept up with my own head, life is beautiful. Like, do you know, it's when I get into my own head, man, it's heaven or hell. There doesn't seem to be any in between for me. Like, again, there's no coasting. It's either I get this thing and I'm aware that, you know, I am not my thoughts. I'm not my feelings. I'm somewhere in the ether of me and my relationship to this world, but I'm not any one thing. I'm not my body. I'm, you know, I don't have to go with it. So I'm there and I'm feeling fantastic. Or I'm right up in the middle of my thoughts going, what the fuck does this mean? No, I think you're having a bit of a dip here. No, oh my God, you're relapsing. And then I go into like, what did he mean by that there? No, and like, why haven't I fucking progressed? No, and RT aren't getting back to me at all. And that's just hell. Like, it's hell. And it's hell for other people as well. Yeah. You know, so it's one or the other. But for anybody who's struggling, like, look at the thinking. If you're not looking at your thinking, try to look at it, because like things aren't as bad as your illness is telling you it is. You're visualizing it. Yeah.
You said something there. How important is outside help? And when I say outside help, like, we're both, like, we go to different fellowship, like there's a 12-step program in it. And when we say outside help, we mean therapy. Yeah. With a psychotherapist, psychologist, a counsellor, whatever it may be. How important was it in your life? Because I know how important it was in my life.
Well, I don't know if I'd still be here without outside help, to be honest with you. Like, the program and recovery is absolutely unbelievable at helping you develop a relationship with a higher power, right? I needed to do that. That is a given. I wouldn't be here without that. But it's also amazing at showing you the shit that you did and the fact that you need to make amends for it. That's also necessary. But what it doesn't do, and it's not set out to do, and it never promises to do, is to look at the kind of pain and the trauma that precipitated the addictions to begin with. Like, I can't sit down with somebody in recovery and say, have you got like a few weeks there till I tell you about what my mum did to me? Like, that's not an option. You know, I have lots of good guides and sponsor in recovery and stuff. Do you know, like, I don't really usually fucking talk about the sponsor now, but sure, like, it's all right with you, you understand. But like, do you know what? I remember going to him at one point, I'd done a load of writing, like, and I was like, I can't wait to tell him everything that my mum did, like, because not only is he going to be crying, but he's also going to be like, Jesus, that was very well written, like, because the ego was coming in. Like, I was writing a feature film on my mum, like, you know. And I started off with what I was saying. I was like, I'm going to be weeks here with this fella, like, I'm going to be sleeping over. And I'd say I was only a minute into it, and he said, that's grand now, we've enough of that stuff. Like, she's dead, and you're still alive, and you need to get well. Yeah. And I was outraged, like, how dare he? Like, I have an unbelievable sob story here, but he was dead right for what the program is trying to get you to do, because you're not looking at other people, as you know, in the program. But I found years later, I still did have to go back and do that work, not to blame her, but to come to understand what was going on in her life, that she was behaving like that, and like the intergenerational trauma kind of thing that we've spoken about before. It didn't make me blame her. It made me understand her and have loads of compassion. But it did at least make me kind of go, like, my mother was an unbelievably anxious person, like the most anxious person I've ever met, before or since. And then I wondered, like, where my fear came from. Like, I was the youngest child and I was at home with her a lot, and she was like constantly on the lookout. Is somebody going to break in? She'd be checking, like, she had an obsessive compulsive disorder, but it was never diagnosed. She'd be checking the knobs on the cooker, and is the house going to go on fire? Every time I left the house, she was worried I was going to get stabbed. And every time I went to Dublin,
I've been living your life like that.
Yeah, exactly.
As a parent.
And I know. And then you throw drinking drugs on top of a fella with those type of fears and they're all taken away. Of course you're going to get addicted, like. But the point I'm making is I was at least able to trace where this stuff had come from in therapy. And I was able to do a bit of inner child work to say, like, you know, because I never felt safe at home. And through the inner child stuff, I was able to understand, all right, I never felt okay. I never felt safe. Then I started drinking and I was one of the lads and I was a fucking superhero. I was getting up to all sorts. I didn't even consider my safety for years. Like, but then you take the substance to stop working and you're left with that fear again. I can't control my head. I can't control my head. I can't control my head. Nervous breakdown. Like, it all makes perfect sense, you know. And I was going to say I'll finish on this. I'm in meeting mode now, totally. But if you're going to escape the fear, run away from it with all sorts of substances, and other people act out, you know, gambling and other behaviours and stuff. I don't know, would you agree? But you're going to have to face that fear at some point anyway. You know, and I kind of always knew that deep down inside. Even in my drinking, there's something going on there that, like, that's to be continued there, like. But you have to confront it either way, and it's hugely painful. But the rewards when you do it then is like actual freedom. Yeah. You actually feel free these days a lot of the time, thank God.
The inner child work that you run about there, I think, is very important, particularly for people who may have had a really traumatic childhood. And when this is from my own experience, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a fucking specialist or expert in anything, but I have my own experience. From my experiences with inner child work based on my own traumas as a young child, the stuff that would have happened to me, a young child doesn't know how to process emotions on the spot. They don't know how to deal with emotions when they're coming up. So, for example, if there's a child in complete fear and they're being beaten or something is happening to them, someone is even screaming them, or they're intimidating them, or whatever it may be, it may be sexual, physical, or doesn't matter what kind of violence it may be or abuse. They don't know how to process that emotion. So what happens is it lodges. They freeze and the emotion lodges in their body. Okay? And it just stays there and it just consumes them and it doesn't go nowhere. It just stays there because the child doesn't know how to sit with it, allow it to come up, feel it, and know what's going on and know kind of where they are and be able to speak. So the inner child work for me was a really, really, really powerful tool. But I had to learn about it because, as I said, I wasn't very, very, very intellectually smart around all this stuff. I had to figure it out.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when you're doing inner child work, you have to, with your counsellor, they will always find a safe place for you to come to if you're going back into something and it's quite challenging.
Yeah.
So there was times I would have tried, and I remember going back to my young self based on something that I was triggered with. And when I got triggered, remember now when I said triggered, the adult got triggered, the emotion came up. I didn't know where this stuff is coming from. So I decided, let's go back, let's drop. I went back into my young childhood, and I have a picture of a time in my life where it was a really, really, really difficult place. So I went back, and the first time I went back to that child, I remember very vividly. Do you remember now meditation is a big part of my life as well, and I can move into these places, whereas if it's somebody who doesn't meditate quite a lot, it can be a difficult challenge.
Yeah, of course.
So I went back and I was kicked, screamed at, pushed in every different angle because that child was completely, I had no one.
Yeah.
You know, and I had nobody, even though thinking of it, and I've spoke about this stuff before, and I never gave up. This adult here who knew how to process on the spot because he'd learned in recovery was going back now, and he was showing this young child how to be able to handle stuff.
Yeah.
So I kept going back. Every time I'd go back, I'd be in meditation, I'd go back, and sometimes I'd bring stuff up and I'd trigger myself with stuff so I could go back there and allow. So I kept going back and back and back. And now if I go back to that child, I went from kicks to pushes to slowly kind of going over, like allowing me to touch the football or allowing me to kind of play well done and things like that, to coming over, sitting on the lap, fucking playing, and just looking at me then as not being a threat.
Yeah.
So this stuff started to work for me, and I was starting to feel massive shifts in myself. And I was saying, and then there was other stuff starting to come up. And the addiction days, there was a lot of shame there, guilt for some of the things that I'd done to my family, to other people, innocent people who didn't deserve. And I had forgot completely about, I was saying, so I started going back to him. I started going back to the young childy teenager who was fucking chaotic, mad, had no fear of nothing.
Yeah.
And I started going back to the man side of it, the guy who was fucking destroyed from drinks and drugs. And I went back, the first time I went back to see him, and the shame, it was like the head was down like that. And remember now, I acted like I was a big macho man back in the day, full of tattoos, fucking the lifestyle, all the jigs and reels that go with that life, the materials,
Yeah.
And I went back, man, it was like the head, but it was just on the floor. And you, like, I wasn't acting the big macho man or anything anymore at this stage, and the head was done, man. And he actually felt worse than the child. I had to do more work there with this man than I had even to go back with the child. But where my point is this.
That's powerful to me, listening to you there, man.
It is. It's fucking, because I felt massive shifts in my life based on this. Because when we hear inner child work, we believe it's going back and working with the child. For us addicts, we cause a lot of trauma in our lives as well when we're in active addiction, and we still don't know how to process, we still don't know what emotions are. We might as well still be that fucking 6-7 year old child that's struggling and being abused or being neglected or whatever it may be. But when you go back to that man as well, he's the same person there. He's just a grown up in a fucking child's body. He's a grown up with the mentality of a child. And I started working with him, and I started fucking doing all these, just going back and saying it's all right. Like, that's when it changed for me. That's when the shift happened. The love I started to feel for myself. I fucking tell you about it. Was even, I'm getting the hairs on the back of my neck is standing up because of this, how powerful that fucking work is. It just shifted when I started having the love for him, because I never had the love for him. We all can go back and love the child. God help us. The child is innocent.
But
what about our lost selves? Our lost selves. Like, fucking, we do bad things and we react and we do shit that we're not proud of and we're shameful of. But like, at the end of the day, I was a fucking child trapped in a man's body that hadn't a fucking clue how to behave or understand how my actions were hurting other people. And it changed my life.
Fuck, you have to give me food for thought there now, because
it changed my life.
I've done so much on the child, but I don't think I've done that journey there to the later stage, like, as I was listening to you there, I was thinking, because I can go to the child easy, as you say, like, because I feel the empathy is flooded, and I have children myself now, and I'm like, God, like, I do anything to protect the child. But the kind of 19, 20, 21 year old me, I don't want to be around him or something, he's kind of ugly to me or something, like, because like it's just so full of bullshit and bravado and self-loathing all mixed into it, and capable of doing anything. And I don't like being around a part of myself that was kind of willfully treating other people like shit as well. So it's harder to do that. Whereas the kid version of me, I can kind of glorify that easier, like, You
said something there, and I'll let you continue. I just want to mention this, right? If we go out the door here and we see a child out there and he's playing on a bike or kicking the ball off the wall, God fucking help us, the innocence. But if you go out there and there's a 22-year-old Tadhg or Timmy, anti-social behaviour, talking like he's a bit of a fucking gangster, has the chains and the whatever else they fucking have, you're kind of saying, that fucking,
It's harder to feel compassion.
It's harder to feel it. So we're going to find it really hard to go back and have that bit of compassion for ourselves. So when I started doing that work on me, I started seeing other fellas that were fucking in that position, and I was saying, fucking hell, my heart would go to them because I was seeing my fucking self with the head down, knowing that they're still in that spot. Do you get me?
Yeah.
Do you see the shift? Do you see how different it can be when we're looking at ourselves in different ways?
Yeah.
You know? And I just felt it was important because when you brought up that side of yourself, when you were 21, 22, the ego, because it's all ego, we're full of testosterone as well.
Yeah.
Like we're fucking really building the ego, starting to develop now, and it's coming to its peak at that age. And like it is quite difficult to have any, because we're looking back saying, what a fucking go on me, why did I say that?
Not a likeable guy, like, you know what I mean? I wouldn't have been a likeable, and I thought I was fucking brilliant, like, but I wouldn't spend 2 minutes with a version of me now, you know, at that age, like, you know. But yeah, that's interesting. And like the fella out there that you're, the fictional character out there, 21 or 22, like he could be busting your balls as well, like, so it's hard again, it's harder again then, you know, because he could be impinging on your life now. But like self-compassion is loads of it. Like I still, like I'm in a very good spot actually at the moment, but I will still struggle a little bit with self-compassion. And it's only when I was flooded with compassion there now as you were describing your journey. And I was thinking to myself, where this man has come from, like it's it's a beautiful miracle, like, and that you survived to do that work. Yeah. I'm privileged to listen to it.
Thank you.
There was a friend of mine the other day there now as well who described her childhood in a kind of a bit of detail that I hadn't heard before. I knew some stuff, but you went into the detail. I got quite emotional. I was like, it's a miracle that this woman is fully functional in the world, you know. But I can sometimes overlook that with me, that it's like, yeah, I've had a difficult childhood, but I have to whip out for myself way quicker, that it's like, all right, like, but you've done that stuff now, that's ages ago, fucking drive on now. Like, you need to be helping people and you need to be doing this, you need to be doing that. And that's more into the kind of should thinking. And again, to come back to the thinking, you can work on that stuff. Like I have to work on my thinking all the time. It's not like you get to a certain point and you're just having naturally beautiful, loving, self-compassion thoughts. Not my experience. Like,
doesn't happen.
No. Like the great realization I've had in the last couple of years, I think, is I will never be free from having destructive, distorted thoughts, but I can be free from believing them and having to act on them. Like, that's fucking, I mean,
and judging them. And judging yourself based on them.
Yeah.
And just
they're
knowing
not mine.
They're not yours.
Yeah.
They're just, and you said something earlier on. You said you can get a day there where you can just look at them and say, fucking hell, where the fuck are these things coming from?
Yes.
And I often said, I'm the same. I said, where the fuck does this stuff come from? Do you know, the thoughts?
Yeah.
And then then my thinking would go into somewhere like, Jesus Christ, I wonder, fucking, does that have anything to do with maybe a past life or something, you know? And then another thought would come in and say, let's not go there.
Well, that's the answer. Not go there is the answer. Like, who
the fuck knows? Like,
yeah.
But the key is what you said. What you just said there is, and you said it earlier as well. Is you're not your thoughts.
No.
You know, and we are not our thoughts. Our thoughts are based on our conditioning, our core beliefs about ourselves, things that we've seen growing up, you know, from others in the environment, that we, in us believing that was the way to behave or to think or act or whatever it may be. But in general, what we are is this beautiful, brand new, innocent being that's just born into a world that has its own way of moulding us and changing everything about us based on the environment.
That's a nice way of putting it, John.
And I always look at it like this. If I'd growing up 100 metres in a different house down the road, my life could have been completely different, you know. But now I also look at now, knowing that what I've came through and the way I feel at the moment, I wouldn't change my life for anything.
Me neither, yeah.
Because the strength that life is giving me.
Yeah.
And you know who my hero was? And I've said this numerous times. My hero is that young boy who got me through life. I don't know how he coped.
Yeah.
I genuinely do not know how this little boy was able to get through what he got through. And that's the reality of it. And that's my hero. And that's
beautiful.
And I sat here one day, I was actually sitting in that chair and I was thinking about it. I was here on my own. And I was saying, how the fuck did you get through that?
Mm.
Do you know? And I was saying, like, I'm a grown fucking man. I'm a strong man. If somebody physically attacked me, I'd be able to back myself up. But this was a small, skinny fucking weak child, like, do you know? And I said, fucking hell, how'd you get through it? Do you know? And from that moment on, I just said, I don't know anybody that was able to fucking get through life like that. And I look up to that little kid.
Absolutely.
Do you know?
Because the spirit, like you had, in spite of everything that was going on and the chaos and everything, like your spirit or your life drive found a way to survive. I always think that as well.
Yeah, it's powerful, by what we have inside us in human beings, and like even you could just go a step further there, by and look at some of the shit that's going on in the world. And I know you're an advocate for fucking the shit that's going on in Gaza, the children, the women, the men, you know, people that have been innocent people being fucking killed on a daily basis, you know. And then I kind of look at that, and I look at people in Africa who are just living in fucking war from the moment they're born into this world as well. And I'm saying, like, look at it, we are so fucking unique as beings, and we are so adaptable to whatever environment we're given.
Yeah.
That, like, people in Gaza or Africa would step into the lives that we have now and be, fucking hell, this is the daddle.
Oh, yeah,
this is great.
Yeah,
so what the fuck are they worried about? Their fucking electricity bill. Or they have no money to... What's wrong with your legs?
Just a series of luxury problems, really.
Do you know what?
Yeah.
It's so different, and that gives me a lot of gratitude and appreciation for what I have. I'm blessed. I'm blessed to be alive. I'm blessed that I got another chance to live in life based on this shit that I was involved in and this shit that fucking I would have done and in my past life. You know, but it's like a 360 Tadhg. It's like, it just starts here to here. And you come to here and you don't know who the person was who started the journey at the fucking beginning, because we're different people.
Absolutely.
We're different behaviours. We believe differently. You know, I wouldn't harm a fly. I fucking genuinely wouldn't harm a fly. Animals, I fucking love animals, you know. I don't know, but it's just, it's like you're going back. It's like being fucking born into what you're supposed to feel, because what you were really meant to feel was taken from you because you had to adapt to the environment that you were being brought up in, and if you had to close off and shut off emotionally, because you probably would have fucking not survived.
Exactly.
You know, and it's like, no that you deal with the trauma of all that shit when you're young. No, you can allow yourself to go back 360 and allow yourself to feel again.
Yeah.
And it can be overwhelming, because I get really emotional at times for no reason.
Totally.
For really soft things, like, and I'm saying, Jesus Christ, what the fuck is going on here? Do you know?
It's your feelings, like, you're just getting
but
your
then it
feelings
can be
back
black
slowly,
or
like.
white. It can be white. If someone fucking upsets me, then a human being, or they say something to me, or they say something about me, it's like, that cunt is dead. Do you know what I mean?
Well, you're not going to completely transform, like,
do
all
you get
stuff's
me?
there, like.
Because that's the old protect. That's that he was there to protect me as well in that environment. And you know what? I want him to stay.
Yeah.
Because we need that side of ourselves as well to be able to help us and to protect us.
But you know, like you said earlier, when you said, like, you found out what you're good at, you know, and you own it, like, I think that's part of the recovery process as well. And that's why I'm doing some of the stuff that I have been doing in the last year, because I feel like I wanted to do two things if I was lucky enough to survive. You know, when you're at your lowest moments and you're kind of going, and they'd all be the head for me. They'd never be incidents. I was in prison cells, but I didn't do long stretches. You know, I lost family members temporarily maybe, but they weren't gone from my life. I was able to see my daughter eventually. It would be more in my head, the low points where I kind of thought to myself, I don't think I'm going to survive this. But if I do, by some miracle, I want to be authentic in my life. Because there's so much bullshit associated with addiction for me. Yeah. Like, it was a total facade. Like you said there, when you went back to the young fella who was the tough man and actually he was in bits, that was exactly me. Like, but if you'd have seen me out in public, like it's funny, like I'd be at parties when I was in my early 20s and I was known for having an ego. That was part of my shtick, like. And like the lads would be taking the piss on me going like, I remember one night one of the lads was like kind of going like, geez, Tadhg, you really suffer from self-esteem issues, don't you? And he was saying it ironically, like, and everyone laughed because I'd always be going on about myself about how great I was. But the irony was like, I was absolutely crippled with self-esteem issues, you know what I mean? But the act was kind of there, like. But I just said, if I get well by some miracle, I mightn't use the term for it, but I wanted to break the cycle. I thought if I just left, you know, this intergenerational trauma thing, like if I could get myself somewhat well and my kids don't grow up in fear, like that would be job done for the personal life. Like I have a 20-year-old daughter today and I have an 18-month-old daughter and I have another child on the way, actually.
Congratulations.
And so far, those children, to the best of my knowledge, are not in fear, or at least not chronic fear because of my behaviour or my effect on them. So like that's a work in progress till the day I die. But if I could just leave my children with an awareness that they don't have to live in fear, like that will be job done there. And then in terms of the work that I wanted to do, I wanted to be able to, I feel like I'm good at raising awareness of difficult issues and advocating for the oppressed through comedy. Like nobody would ever suggest it at a comedy workshop, but that's somehow where I've ended up. And because I'm good at it, I have this feeling that it's what I should be doing. So that's what I do. That's why I do what I do, because I have a feeling of being able to play my small little part in a much greater thing to try and raise awareness of it. So I feel compelled to do it. But I also feel that that's one of the reasons why I'm still alive, because that's what I was supposed to do.
That's the purpose.
That's my purpose.
And you know what? Isn't it a great feeling to know, right, for a human being, that they've actually met a purpose, a real purpose, amazing, not an egotistical purpose.
No, there's no ego.
It's a purpose, and I've Tony, you can tell me, you know this because I have to say it fucking enough times. Like, I know that I've actually succeeded in life in an area of purpose, in giving back, and I know, like, if I did pass away in the morning, which hopefully won't happen until I'm fucking very, very, very wrinkly, and I have my little place wherever it's warmer than Ireland, and a little few vegetables and animals, and I live there, and I'm sitting on my porch, and I don't have to answer an email or answer a phone, and I've nothing to do.
Oh, I definitely identify with that.
I just, there's nothing to do. There is absolutely nothing to do. I did really fulfill a purpose in life, and I feel like that now, right now at the moment.
That's brilliant.
Because in the last four or 5 years, whether it's with Tony and the rest of the lads in the long way back, or with James and the two Norries, I felt like that I was after giving a real big part of myself back to my community and to people in general, and it's a really powerful part of me. I'm not one of these people that goes around fucking telling people that I have a podcast or I do this or I do that, because it's just not me.
Yeah.
I don't go around talking about myself and I'm this and I'm that.
Yeah.
Do you know, it's just not me. You know, but I feel like that I've really done something beautiful for myself in life. And we speak about higher power and spirituality and God. I've nobody to be grateful other than my higher power and God for giving me this feeling that I have today, based on me knowing that I've really done something good with my life, you know, and I'm so grateful for that, you know. But bringing it back to you, like, your purpose, you believe your purpose in life is speaking out for those who are kind of held back.
True comedy, maybe. Like,
yes, true comedy. But I love the seriousness of the comedy. But it looks so natural, Tadhg. It doesn't look like you're actually performing for a camera. It looks fucking pure. Because it's do you know the way you have different actors? You have actors who actually act like they actually are in real life.
Yeah.
It's pretty much the same, but you know, with a bit of his kind of more
that's
serious.
I can't do accents, like, so that's why everyone's from Cork in all my sketches.
It's very good. But like, what is some of the work you're actually doing around Palestine at the moment?
So like, I would probably put out a sketch once a week. So that would be the kind of core stuff, I suppose. And then there's pretty much every activist group I can think of in the country, and a lot outside the country as well, have open access to my Instagram because I have a decent following on there. So anybody who wants to promote anything, I collaborate with them on Instagram so that it gets a more reach, like it goes out to more people. But then I do like videos to promote different events. Myself and Sean have done a podcast where we've interviewed Palestinians, because at that period I just became enraged with the kind of blacking out and silencing of Palestinian voices and perspectives, particularly just after October 7th, where it felt like the Western media were really trying to curate who was allowed to speak and who wasn't, and we were getting just the Israeli side. So I felt, because the mainstream media was so shit, that I wanted to play my little role. Like I wouldn't be a podcast guy really, but we just did some podcasts with Palestinian guests, and it was important for me as well not to get just high profile people, but to get like, you know, regular people in Ireland, like for instance Habib, who works in his cafe, who's just has become a good friend of all of ours, but you know, he's not famous, like, but he's from Gaza, and he had a wonderful perspective of being from Gaza and being in Ireland at the time. And whatever I suppose I can do to amplify Palestinian voices and to try and not make it all about me. At the end of the day as well, though, we're still human beings, so I have to watch the ego all the time. Like I have to watch. I need to be spiritual in all aspects of my life as much as I can, or at least try to be. There's no point in me, you know, getting into the mindset of, well, I'm off trying to sort out the Middle East here on my own. It's just basically me and the South African government are sorting out the Middle East, like, and then go home and treat my old doll disrespectfully. Like that won't work at all. Like, you know what I mean? So, I mean, that woman literally pulled me out of a gutter, like, you know, so I might have fans and followers like in far off places now, but like I didn't have the price of a fucking cup of tea, and I was pretty much homeless. I wasn't allowed to see my daughter, and I was on the verge of a psychiatric hospital admission, and that woman was by my side. Like, we weren't even going out with each other then, Timmy. Like, that's what a woman. Powerful. She was just my friend, you know.
Listen, I get it, but
yeah,
I get it, because I have one of those women in my life as well, and I'd be the same. Psychiatric hospital, life in prison, or a box.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those different things. You said you mentioned something there, and it brought me back to something. Something else that went on with when I was part of the Two Norries with James. Do you know when somebody actually speaks out from Palestine, would a threat actually be active on their life for speaking out as well? Because we had a lady on there last year or the year before, and she was actually in so much fear for her life that we actually had to take the podcast down. Do you know?
Yeah.
And like, there would never be an issue with taking it down. It was just like, I was actually upset for her.
I know.
You know?
I know, yeah. And I know who you're on about, but obviously I won't say it for obvious reasons.
Of course, but to have that much fear on somebody, like, because they're speaking out for how their family are being killed and hurt for no reason, like it's fucking.
But the level of control and surveillance is on another planet, like, you know. Like, I know a good few people in here and Britain, and one in Europe as well, Palestinians, or one is from Jordan, who don't go to the marches because they're afraid of being captured on camera and social media posts going out there, and then their family in Jerusalem or whatever will be affected by it.
So that's the threat. That is the fear.
Yeah.
It's not so much on themselves, it's their families being...
Well, they're the best of people, like, you know, they all, like, unlike us here, they don't think in the individual much at all. They always think of community. So they're always thinking of how it affects their family. That's my experience of Palestinians anyway. So for the people back home in the West Bank particularly, like, it could directly affect the way that they're being treated. But yeah, I don't know, is there... I suppose just to touch on one of the other reasons that I'm involved in it as well, like, I can't understand how you would be a passionate Irish Republican, for instance, and not be very activated by what's going on here, because it's the same story. It's the same struggle. I think if you're an Irish Republican and you don't give a shit about what's going on in Palestine, I'd say you'd probably have to face facts that you're a racist then, like, because it's the complete same colonial playbook, like, you know.
How are things like I'm not somebody who's very political. I'm not somebody who watches a lot of news. I'll be very honest with it, because I kind of stay in my own bubble and kind of float around life without having any extra stuff coming into my head and taking over my own kind of consciousness. So, like, what is actually going on? Like, why are so many people being killed and taken and put out of their homes, you know, and just left there to fucking die in wastelands in a country that was once their home in Palestine? And, like, why is nothing happening with these big Western powers like the Americans and the English? And they're looking at something that happened back in the 40s that was no different. It was absolutely people being killed for no reason whatsoever, women and children. Like, what is the difference, like?
Fucking hell. That's another
question,
podcast. Like. No, but to give a kind of a rough and ready sum up, in my opinion, it's that Israel is another outpost of settler colonialism, and that's a very Western European kind of thing. Like, so it's like an extra state of the US, and it's protected by Western European and American interests. So what happens to Israel directly affects the West. So particularly America, can position itself as if it's an honest broker in the area, but they have a vested interest in everything that happens in Israel. Also, the Israeli lobby in the US is the most powerful lobby in Washington, and they have both sides of the houses in their pocket. They brag about it, like. So what's going on is that there's not enough will, or there's not enough people willing to take a risk in the West to stand up and criticize Israel, because A, they're kind of one of their own, and B, you're very well paid in political and media life in the West if you are pro-Israel, or at least if you're not criticizing Israel. Unfortunately, the Palestinians have fallen through the cracks of this kind of neo-colonial world where not enough people care about them, including their own people, their own Arab brethren. Yeah. Like, a lot of the Arab states will sell them out as well. Like Saudi Arabia would be one that comes to mind, the UAE. So that's why I feel brokenhearted for them, that the Irish never went through exactly what the Palestinians are going through right now, because we had a presence in the US particularly. And again, I think because of racism, that the US would never have allowed Britain to mass murder Irish people in the same numbers. I'm shocked.
Because there were so many Irish Americans.
Americans wouldn't have stood for it.
Some of them were actually fucking high up in government as well.
Absolutely, in the police and all walks of life. But I do think the colour of the skin is huge as well. Like, I do think that in the West we just have this bias, you know, where we get really affected by what's going on in Ukraine because those people look a bit more like us. And then we look at ours being killed, we kind of think, well, there's always stuff going on in the Middle East. Like, it's harder to... And that's why I think Irish Republicans need to transcend that stuff, because we traditionally have. It's not about your race. It's not about your ethnicity. It's about you being oppressed by a settler colonial force. And if you're Irish and you don't empathise with that, you haven't read your history book, in my opinion. Like,
do you think Trump as the new president will make changes between what's going on in Israel and Palestine at the moment?
What I'd say on Trump, right, this is my own belief. Like, I actually had an argument with a boy at the march the other day. They're a friend of mine, Tom O'Halloran, his son Oscar. He's a brilliant kid and he's very politically engaged. And every time we start chatting to each other, Tom goes, I leave them off, right? We'd have these kind of little pseudo rows. And I said, do you know what? I think Trump will be better than Harris would have been. And he's like, I'm not talking to you anymore. Like, the kid was furious with me. But the reason I say that is because Harris is like, you know, same as it ever was. Like, I can tell you what Harris's presidency would have been like, because she's beholden to the donors in Washington. Like, her two biggest donors are Silicon Valley, right? So they don't want any economic changes because they run America, like, and the Israel lobby, which I mentioned. So if she says, I'd like to call for an arms embargo on Israel, well, the Israel lobby will go, well, we'll have to take away the $1 million that we gave you. So she's completely hobbled because she's a total corporate being. So she will just continue what Biden was doing. So we know there's going to be no radical changes there. Trump, I don't think is a fascist, which is a controversial view. I've got a lot of hassle for this. People try and paint him as a fascist in the West. I think he's a Trumpist. He's an egomaniac. He's like us, except we never confronted any of our problems. He's a big child. He's never gone on any journey with his inner child. You can be sure of that anyway.
100%. He's never taken ayahuasca either.
No. Fucking hell, imagine that. Imagine my mushrooms.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
But like, nobody has ever, like, you and I were probably blessed by the fact that we had no one around us going, you're grand, keep doing what you're doing. Like, we didn't get any of that. He's had people his whole life saying, you know, you belt on, you're doing grand or whatever. So there's no therapy, there's no self-reflection. He's a big baby. He's like a man-child, I think. So, and he's a very egotistical person. He's like a transactional president. For instance, with Iran. So Iran and the US are supposed like fucking sworn enemies in terms of corporate America. If the new president of Iran says something nice to Trump, if they meet, Trump would be liable to go, I like this guy. Fuck it, let's have a new deal, like, let's get back to the table. So Trump, because he's such an egoist, is more capable of a curveball. For that reason, I think the Middle East, ultimately, the region is in better hands with Trump. I understand why Americans, in terms of domestic issues...
But he's also not under the thumb as well by some of the corporate organisations over there, I think, and that's a good thing.
Exactly.
He'll go what he thinks is right for the country. Like,
he's more
American.
likely to do a deal with Putin, definitely. And I think most people at this stage, you know, there was a lot of people who were like really amped up about the war at the start. Most people realise what's going on now. That if the Americans had any good intentions at the start, they're gone now.
Have we ever had fucking so many wars in the last, I don't know, fucking in my lifetime area, let's just say 40 years. Like, are we at the verge of maybe something really big, a world war, like?
Well, like...
We're between Russia now, fucking in Ukraine. That could, like, Russia are superpowers.
Yeah.
They have the backing of China. They have the backing of fucking Iran. Like, if they ever really, and Brazil and other countries in there's a BRICS, is it?
Yeah.
If they ever do get together and, like... There could be a fucking really, really serious world war.
Totally.
And I think it's just, it takes one madman to have a bad day and press one fucking button for everything to go bad.
There's Noam Chomsky, who'd be one of my heroes, I suppose. I would have been reading him in college and stuff. And he's got this thing about, like, there's a doomsday clock, apparently. And it indicates how far or near we are to absolute disaster. So if you add up the climate crisis was probably number one, the threat of nuclear war, there's a couple of other variables. If you add them all up, that shows you how near you are to absolute complete obliteration of human life as we know it on this planet. And I think the doomsday clock is like a minute from midnight. Or could be even less now, but it's as far now or further than it was at the height of the Cold War, where for a long period, you know, people were building bunkers and we believed that it was like the end of the world was coming because, you know, if the Soviets and the Americans start trading nuclear blows, it's over. So we're more near disaster now, right? But it's funny because I do a little bit of, not a little bit, I do loads of CBT with the thinking and stuff like that. And there was in this podcast I was listening about CBT, there was a woman saying, like, if the world is so fucked, like, then aren't my thoughts real? they're not distorted. Like, the world is fuck, what's the point? And I was kind of thinking, like, I'm glad that my mindset is the world is so broken right now. We're so unwell, and these leaders, these people in power are the most unwell. But that would make me feel like we need people who are some little bit well then to get in there and start trying to make a difference. Even if you can't win, even if you can't save the world, you could still make some person's life a bit easier. So that's why I think we need, if you feel like you're up to it, to kind of get in there now. Like, that'd be my philosophy anyway. Like, the lefties that I like, when I grew up reading lefties or watching them on TV, whatever, I was saying this to my partner Claire the other day. Do you know, like, somebody who's into trade unionism and trying to make a difference with the world, like, some of them, as they get a bit older, they get very cranky and they get very negative. I'm always drawn to the guy who's like, the world is fucked. We're lefties though. We might never win, but we have to go down fighting. Like, that be my mindset, you know, because otherwise I'll go under myself. What's the point in anything then? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you just talked about all the work that you've done yourself and you're living this beautiful life. And I agree with you. It's not great news to find out then though that the planet is under direct threat, like that we may only have a few years left. Like,
and I fully believe that.
Yeah.
And it brings me back to something that I experienced maybe 2 or 3 years ago during an ayahuasca experience.
Oh, wait, you actually did ayahuasca?
I've done it a few times.
Wow.
And I experienced the sadness of the Mother Earth, how she felt, how we were completely soaking it from every natural material or mineral that's been there. We're just soaking it dry.
100%.
And when I'm thinking then of the greed just of man, that for to be the one with the most money, the most cars, and I'm saying, like, do we not actually fucking understand what's going on?
Yeah.
We've so much wealth in this world, there's no need for one person to be starving.
Yeah.
I think everybody would have, there's so much wealth there, everybody would have absolutely more than enough that they need.
Yeah.
They'd live comfortably, they wouldn't be cold, they wouldn't be left out in rain, you know. It's just, I don't know.
This is how brainwashed we are in this part of the world though, because like, you let people tell you now, like, socialism, communism, it never worked. You can't find an example of where it worked, right? And yet nobody will ever say capitalism hasn't worked. And capitalism has brought us to the point where there's wars all over the world. The only industry that's really doing well is the arms industry. We're close to midnight on the doomsday clock, and the planet is burning and raising in temperature every year. This year is going to be on record the hottest year of all time. And that's all a direct consequence of capitalism and the greed, as you said. I'm thinking a lot about greed lately. It is all greed, actually. Every conflict is to do with greed. And no one will ever say capitalism hasn't worked. Like, capitalism is just about to fry the planet we live on. But people would say, no, socialism was dangerous. A lot of people were killed. It's fucking brainwashing, man.
But like, when you look at, there'll be nobody here to look back and say
exactly. No one left to
how
try.
Fucking damaged capitalism has been to the world.
Exactly, like, yeah.
You know, but listen, Tadhg, have you anything coming up? Any events or anything that you want to mention?
Well, in terms of plugging my own stuff, you see, I'm such a nice guy, I won't bother plugging my own stuff. I'll just plug the therapy. No, I was actually going to mention a couple of things I have been doing, which people might find useful, right? Because I wouldn't be a big self-help book guy, but I read a book called The Untethered Soul because someone belonged to me was telling me to read it for a long time. And it speaks about that thinking thing where, you know, I think the author has an idea of the seat of consciousness. So you're in the seat of consciousness and your thoughts are going on down here. So there's objects outside you here that are not yours. Like, this room is not mine, but the thoughts and the feelings and all this kind of stuff, I'm going to do this to him now and I must say that to him. And what did he mean by that? That's also not you. Like, it helped me to gain that bit of distance from the thinking. So I found that very good. And also there's a lad called David Burns who has pioneered a new version of CBT, and it's called TEAM, TEAM CBT. I have found that very, very useful as well for the thinking, because I've kind of concluded this phase of my therapy and spiritual journey by saying it's all won and lost in the thinking for me. So those two things have been very helpful.
And I totally agree with you. It is all it's all won and lost, and a good day and a bad day are completely based on how a person understands their thoughts.
Yeah.
And how much they actually believe that their thoughts are reality and not reality.
Yeah.
And I understand this stuff 100,000,000% because I got to that place in life where I know that my thoughts are exactly not who I am. You know, they're just there. It's just information.
Yeah.
As you said, it's just here. But sometimes if you're not conscious and you're unconscious and you're thinking away, you can get caught up in them.
Totally, yeah.
But you can become aware then again and just become conscious of that these thoughts are here and say, here we go again.
Bring yourself back,
You know?
like, yeah.
And just leave them there. But yeah, thoughts will...
The only other thing I want to plug, Timmy, is just to say that, like, with the Palestine thing, a lot of us are being restricted online at the moment. So, like, my reach is way down. So we need, like, new people to take the baton now and fucking drive it on a little bit, because a lot of us are getting restricted. So this, like, Palestine hasn't gone away, like, because it mightn't be front and centre in BBC or RT, whatever. It's actually still going on, and it's worse than ever. So, like, if you haven't been vocal so far, and especially you've got a big page, it's never too late to join the campaign. Like, we'd be delighted for new voices and stuff, like, you know, because we need
100%, you. 100%. And Sean, you'd also... Do you know, Sean, you have your own page as well, like...
Yeah, I did the same thing as Tadhg. I don't know if people can hear me, but the same thing as Tadhg. Like, I've even found myself over the last couple of weeks, my page is now being restricted. I shared just a photograph of an awards ceremony a couple of days ago. That post is now being lowered into people's feeds.
Yeah.
So...
How does that happen?
It's
Meta, they're totally pro-Zionist.
They're Silicon Valley, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they're actually quite openly biased, like, from the top down. Like, there was that podcast I sent you on with Al Jazeera about, like, their employees. So many Arab employees have quit and stuff because of the open bias, and they weren't even allowed. You know, they have an internal intranet system. They weren't allowed to send each other condolences if some members of their family had been killed in Gaza. That's the level it's at, like.
Someone talk, and they had said that, like, during from October 7th to, let's get up to, like, January or February, I'd watched this thing in February, the moderation offices inside of Meta. So there is, like, a team of people that moderate any if I post something that's reported, then it categorizes it by language. So in Hebrew, there was effectively maybe the bones of 10 moderators. So 10 people that would review any post that were done in Hebrew and flagged. And I think it was something like 450 moderators for anything that was posted in Arabic. So, like, it just shows you you're comparing 10 people to comparing 450 people. So it is a very deliberate attack on people that are posting about Palestine and anything. It's a big part of what you see on social media at the moment. You might go on, see a Palestinian flag, and the description reads something like, this is a BMW car and this is all about the car. People are now trying to find ways to just completely hide the fact that they're talking about Palestine so AI can't pick it up. Like, I imagine a lot of this has been scanned by AI and flagged. People.
So when did people actually stop, like, just looking at what's right and wrong? Like, when you look at the situation as somebody that between Gaza and between Palestine and Israel, and you look at the statistics and everything that has been going on and is going on now, like, there's a right and a wrong answer. Why do people not just look at what's wrong? Like, the wrong thing here, from my eyes, is, and this is on both ends, right, between Israelis and Palestinians, there's women and children in the fucking middle of this, and they're being killed, you know, and more Palestinians than anybody else, because the Israelis are a fucking superpower on their own as well. Yeah. You know, like, in what world that we all live in, we all have our own fate. Like, the Americans claim to be Christians, and what fucking faith? Like, and is it right to be able to do things like that? That's where I have kind of issues myself, is just not understanding.
I know what you're getting at, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And that's why I almost got involved in it, because I was like, deep in my heart, you know that this is wrong. Yeah. Like, this is an asymmetrical fight, like, you know it's wrong. But I suppose, to answer your point, like, not enough people agree on what's right and wrong anymore, I suppose. Like,
and that's what I was trying to get out. I don't know, was I going the long way around, but it just doesn't make sense to me.
But then again, I suppose just to go off what Tadhg said,
I don't want him in anymore. Is that okay? Can we edit him out?
You ask why people find it hard to differentiate right from wrong, but a lot of it comes back to America. So the Pentagon have a budget every year just for films, and they have a budget every year for video games. So any movie that comes out of America is usually funded in part by the Pentagon. The American government will put a bit of money towards it. So what that means, and you can look this up, but if you ever play Call of Duty, you'll notice that you're fighting against Arabs. It's always Arabs.
Fucking hell.
Yeah.
It is always Arabs. If you actually sit down and watch the credits of any Call of Duty video game, you will notice the CIA, the Pentagon, their names start popping up, funded by. A lot of movies that have been created over the last couple of years that would feature airplane crashes and stuff like that, the CIA or any terrorist attacks, the CIA, Pentagon would be more inclined to push that it is an Arab narrative that's put in there, so that the terrorists are Arab. And this is, you can look this up online, it's well documented, but that's a big part of it, is that like me as an Irish kid would have grown up playing video games where Arabs are the problem. So then if I'm not keeping up with what's really happening in the world, like it's very, very easy for me if I'm playing 8 hours of video games every day to then look online and see, oh, Arabs are causing trouble. Fuck, that makes sense.
Typical,
like I'm shooting them every single day in this video game, so of course they're the problem.
It's good guys versus bad guys, like, you know. It's like Rambo. Like, we grew up watching Rambo movies, like where there was one American lad trying to sort out these unruly Vietnamese in the jungle, like, you know. It leaves a kind of an impression on you, right, that the Americans are the good guys. Like, I suppose the world in the last year is realising, like, for sure now that we're not the good guys. Like, insofar as there's just everyone's good and bad, like, but we're not going to sort out the world. And by we, I mean Westerners are not going to sort out this world. Like, that's my own take on it anyway.
Well, lads, listen, I think we're all tired. So listen,
come on, we all go to bed together.
Get up the blow up there, the blowout.
Put on your nappy, Sean, we're going to bed.
That stain is after drying in the pants anyway.
Just to tell the viewers, Sean thought he may have pissed himself earlier, gang.
Yeah. He said it was water on his pants. We know
dry.
it. You might get your own ad for fucking nappy sales for adults.
If you do get free Pampers, let me know, man, will you? Because I could badly do with an old box of them. Badly.
Oh God, lads, listen. Thank you so much, boys.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Tadhg on the ball, bro.
Pleasure, bye. Absolute pleasure.
Sean, thanks a million, pal. Thank you.
Nice and pissy pants.
Oh,
And again, as always, thanks to Tony. Thank you, Tony.
Nice
and
one.
Listen, I hope everybody enjoyed this episode. You know, there's a lot. Myself and Tadhg spoke about. We spoke a lot about recovery. We spoke a lot about the different routes of and journeys that we all go through, particularly the inner child work there. We spoke about that, and I think that's powerful. And we spoke a little bit about Gaza and Palestine, or Israel and Palestine. You know what's going on there. And if anybody wants to contact either yourself and Sean, how do they contact you?
Sean, you'll have to follow him around Cork. If people want to contact me, it's info@tadghhickey.com, because actually I'm trying to divert everyone onto the email at the moment because the messages coming in are just nuts. So info@tadghhickey.com, and I have a lovely friend of mine, Anya, who'll answer them on that.
Sound.
Thank you.
So yeah, you can contact Tadhg or Sean. And Sean, what's yours again?
If anyone wants to follow me, it's at Swan, I guess, SWANIGUESS.
On the ball, pal. So listen, lads, thank you again. Thank you so much. It was a great chat. I really enjoyed it. And listen, thanks to everybody at home for listening, and God bless. Bye-bye.